the beginning of a series of just shit. Unfortunate shit, because like at the core of it, all of this was unnecessary, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so for those that are new or haven't read either my blog on this piece of I sued my employer or even the New York Times or New York Magazine article about daylight, which is essentially what this series is going to be about. So if you're new here, I'm essentially sharing my experience of what it was like working there. I'll eventually get into like the specifics of what happened when me and a couple folks sued, mediation, the ending, all of that type of stuff. But I gotta start at the beginning, right? I gotta tell you how I got to daylight, why I chose it, the first of many red flags that I saw, amongst other things. But in any case, I hope you learned something from this experience. That's kind of why I'm doing it. It's not necessarily, all about getting back at people. I am holding them accountable because that is a big thing for me, period. But also because I believe all employees deserve to hold their leaders or their bosses, because I don't think these people are leaders, accountable. And there shouldn't be anything wrong with that, right? I hear some people say from time to time to be like, well, they're not worth it. Or, let it go, move on, blah, blah, blah. Like, me moving on does not mean that I can't hold people accountable for the experiences that I had. And to be honest, who does being quiet help? Like, let's be frank. Like, me being silent about this experience, who does that help exactly? So anyway, I'm gonna interrupt myself because I'm going off on a tangent. If you want to catch the rest of this kind of like preamble of why I'm doing this, check it out at the end. But now we're gonna jump into the specifics of like how I got there. So I was working at an affinity digital bank. So by affinity, I mean focused on someone's identity or something specific. There's a lot of affinity neobanks or digital banks out there, at least during the last couple of years. There's Black-focused ones, there's doctor-focused ones, there's environmental-focused ones. But I was leaving one because I had a very toxic situation there. And just to give you a little bit of context, like I don't even know what the full employee was, because I closed down my business Comfort Eats to work at this bank full time. I even was working for the first 3 months without getting paid full time. Under like the guys that they would, once they raised their seed round, they would pay me, and they did, they absolutely did. But like that was a commitment that I had to this mission, to this leadership team, and I was all in. Like, again, I closed down my business to help them build theirs. I was all in this shit. But there's a series of really, 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 really shitty things done by the CEO, directly to me, to others, people that I care about. And it got to the point where by December of 2021, I had so much anxiety every single day of like, what shit am I gonna deal with? Like, what brick of Slack messages attacking me am I going to deal with today? What type of gaslighting am I gonna have to deal with today? And it took me probably a good like 4 or 5 months to get to the point where I was ready to leave, partly because I was so tied to the mission, and I knew, and I will say almost everyone in that company knew that like if I left, it was almost signing their death warrant as far as the company, because I won't say that like I was it, but like I was a big part of that company. But there were just too many things that I not just overlooked, but it just wasn't right. And so when I finally kind of got over this guilt that I felt of kind of abandoning the mission, which it wasn't what I was doing, but that's how I felt it, because I felt that, of the mission so strongly, that I had to take care of myself and my mental health, and, staying here and struggling to hold this like ship apart just for like by my bare hands and my sheer will, when the CEO was like dead set on running that shit into the ground because they were like an egomaniac. I was like, I can't fight him. It's not my company, right? Even if I love this mission so much and I love the people that I'm working with and we have the potential to do so good, I cannot do this alone, particularly if it's not my fucking company. So I decided to leave, and then just so happened Billy Simmons from Daylight reached out to me via LinkedIn, talking about them looking for a product person to kind of head up their digital bank. And when I say she was saying all the right things, girl, I felt like I was being wooed. Okay, I was like, it seemed like every issue that I had identified in my previous org, they had a solve for, right? And I was here for it. Ooh, I was here for it. I was like, this is everything that I'm hoping for. And I will pause to say, someone had told me this, I don't remember exactly who, but like, you tend to optimize when you're looking for like a new thing, either it's a relationship or a job, you tend to optimize for the things that you're lacking in your previous one, which is okay in my opinion. But like, I also would caution everyone, including myself, to also think holistically. So like, just because Billy was saying all the right things, like they have a lean team, whereas the place that I was coming from had hired like a whole ass department that didn't make no fucking sense, and they didn't do anything for a fucking year. And no shade to the people that like worked in this department, but they know they did not do anything for a fucking year. I'll take that back. Some people did some things, some people were working really, really hard, but like the department didn't need to exist, let me put it that way. And so as they were trying to keep busy, to me it was just a waste of money, of salaries, of whatever, of time, energy, all the things. I digress. But I should have taken a breath, because I was also in like an emotional place. I was not necessarily in a desperate place, but like I wanted to move. At that point in December, like I just needed to get out of there, because I just like every single day was just so fucking painful. And then it just kind of felt like this fell into my lap, and this was like the perfect night. It was like ordained. Mana from heaven. Like, this is what you kind of were praying for. And so things went really quickly. So, you know, I had a conversation with Billy, I had conversations with the head of marketing, with the lead designer. And then, like I say, I didn't actually talk to the technical person. The CTO was on vacation, but I took that as like a really good sign that like the CTO Paul took time off. I think he took like 2 weeks at the end of the year, and they weren't going to bother him, even with like a hire. I was like, they respected his time off, and that was kind of like amazing in my mind. So that was only one side of it. Like, the other side was like, for them to hire a product person without talking to an engineering person was issue. And also, I find out, like, my first day, there's actually like a head of engineering that like no one mentioned that I should have talked to probably before making this decision. But nevertheless, I interview with some folks, they're great, and then my last interview is with Rob. And so at the end of the year in December, I was spending, I think, a couple weeks in California with one of my close friends and her family. And it was over this time period that I had this conversation with Rob. And so I was legitimately in her car, in my friend's car, as they went to the restaurant. And we do a Zoom call, and he's asking me some kind of standardish questions, you know, how do you prioritize? I do specifically remember, like, how do you handle a CTO, or sorry, a CEO when you disagree with them, right? And so I gave an answer around, you know, like, I will make my strong opinion about the thing that I feel like is the best path forward. But if you want to do something, like, I'm just not gonna fight you on it, because that's essentially where I came from, where I was like I felt like I was constantly fighting the CEO. And I was like, fine, I'll do what you want me to do. But again, in hindsight is always 20/20. The fact that that question kind of came up, and the fact that he kept saying that he's a product guy should have been a real big ass red flag for me. Because what that means to me is being a product guy, in his words, meant that he felt like he knew more than me about product. So even though he was hiring me to do this job of running a product team and building a product team, he wanted to run product, and he just wanted me to be his hands. He wanted me to do the things that he wanted to do versus like allowing me to do my job. which at this point in my career is not something that I'm interested in doing. I'm not interested in being your lackey. I'm not interested in being your project manager. I'm not interested in being your scapegoat, right? Like, if you're gonna hire me, then hire me to do my motherfucking job. Otherwise, I'm not it. I'm not the person for you. And that's okay. I'm like at this point in my life, I fully agree with the fact that early stage companies do not need a product manager. The CEO is a product manager. What you need is a project manager. You need someone to set deadlines and help the developers do the work and coordinate designs and coordinate rollouts, which is a part of product management, but that is not all of it. Because if you're not actually allowing me to do my job and do things like user research and define the features and prioritize, like if I end up having to take all of that from you or fight you on it and then you overrule me anyway, bruh, sis, fam, listen, again, I'm not the one for you, okay? Anyway, so I have this conversation with him, asking these questions, I answer the questions. He's clearly liking my answers because I can see it in his behavior. And then, he asked me essentially like a question around like why does queer people matter to you? Side note, I think I fully glossed over the fact that Daylight was because they have shut down, was a digital bank for the LGBTQ. Probably will just continue to stay queer moving forward. But so I think he asked me more or less like why did this mission matter to me? Because it does. Like, I may not identify as queer myself, but I have a lot of loved ones who do. I have brothers. I have, I don't know if I have any other family members, but I have a lot of chosen family that identify as queer. And the reality is that I feel like there's a lot of affinities, whether it's Latino, whether it's immigrants, whether it's queer, whether it's Black America. There's an underlying theme between all of those things that I honestly feel that like if we can address it for one community, then we can like unlock it, then we can address it for every community with some tweaks. Like, again, it's not copy and paste, but we're all feeling disenfranchised. We're all, under represented or under resourced or all the things. Like there's a lot of overlap in the experiences of these different communities. And again, I feel like if we could unlock it for one, then we could like really unlock it for everyone else. But and then he said something to the effect, he shared some information, his personal medical history. And I was kind of like, again, so it wasn't because of what he shared, which I will not repeat, because it's not my business to, but it's the fact that this is like the first real time I'm talking to this man, and he tells me something super personal. And it's funny, like, this is not the first time I've come across this. Like, I remember meeting a girlfriend for the first time as like a friend of a friend, and she's like, yeah, and I just like, I casually have this like STD, and I was like, like, okay, I'm a new friend here, and this is a lot. No, there's no judgment on what you're sharing, but like, it's just a lot to tell somebody. And at least in this dynamic with Rob Curtis, who's the CEO of Daylight, when your boss, someone in a position of power, tells you something, or seems to be like really, really vulnerable. And in my opinion, like, again, he may have had a different experience that maybe he felt like we really connected, and like this is something that he would tell people he really connected to the first time really talking to them. To me, the level of the details of what he shared does not warrant that on the first like conversation, like at all. But like, I felt like, damn, and I remember talking about it after the fact to my friend who I was visiting, as well as to my therapist, is like, this man just shared this really intense piece of himself with me, and at the time I was like, that's crazy, like that's a lot. I was in shock, but it also kind of like inherently made me feel like I need to share something with him. because he was that open and vulnerable with me. Because like that's what you tend to do as human beings, to connect. When someone's vulnerable, it kind of allows you to maybe feel a little bit safer to like share something equally as personal. At the time, I was just more in shock that this happened, and I didn't realize that like it was a form of love bombing. But we'll get into those more. Like independently, it could have not been that. There's a pattern that I'll get into in a bit that shows why I classify that beginningness and everything else that will come as a bit of love bombing. But if you haven't researched or read the thing linked that I linked in my blog around love bombing more or less, because it's not an official definition, is someone doing all of these really nice things to make you feel really, really great. It could be anything from like completely complimenting you on everything that you do. It could be like buying you gifts and like doing all of these things that are just like a lot of just positive things towards you, and it makes you feel good. It makes you like create this create this like not quite real extra strong connection with someone that you just met because of all the things that they're doing. And they're like, you're feeling really great because like they value me, they see me like for the first time, particularly if I'm coming from like a toxic relationship, like you seeing me and validating me like feels really great. And then now I'm bought in, right? I'm ignoring maybe some of the red flags that I see. I'm like bought into your success because you're clearly bought into mine, right? And that reciprocity like starts to build itself more and more and more and more and more and more and more. But that was just the beginning. Like I hadn't even got hired yet. Like, so then they give me an offer, I negotiate. I was terrified to negotiate. But that's, that unfortunately is uncommon. Not uncommon rather. Unfortunately not uncommon for women. But anyway, I negotiate, I sign the offer, and I, again, am on cloud 9. I start at the end of January, and I tell my current employer mid-January, and like I'm cutting down, I'm like counting down the motherfucking days. Cause I can't wait to tell him, in the sense that like, then this is over. Like then I can breathe, and I made sure to take some 2 weeks off between me starting the new job and me ending the old job. Just to I don't know if it was actually full 2 weeks, maybe it was just a week, but either way, it was enough time to what I kind of call de-crazy a bit, let some of the baggage go from the old place, kind of recenter yourself, and just look forward to like the new stuff that you're about to kind of jump into. You know what I mean? Not everyone has the privilege to do so. I mean, quite frankly, I didn't necessarily have the privilege to do so, but I did it because it was important to me. I also like even did a little bit of a staycation. I think I got a hotel room for like maybe 2 or 3 days just to get in a different space, and like I went to the spa, and I just needed some space to kind of decompress, because again, where I was coming from was not great. And the interesting thing is like, even when I told the prior boss, like it was during our normal one-on-one where we usually have cameras on, and I think he was driving at the time, and I had my camera on and he had his camera off, and I'm like, this is weird, because now I'm about to tell you like I'm giving him my 2 weeks notice. And so like as I'm talking to like a black screen, my camera is still on, and I'm just giving this notice, and like it's just the weirdest, oddest feeling of like talking to a black screen about something that's like, and his response was kind of, I could tell like he was kind of shocked, but I think it was more, again, this is my opinion, I think he was more shocked that he didn't get a chance to fire me, that I quit first. Because listen, when I tell you I know facts of how he was trying to set me up, but I digress. And then he immediately starts I tell him I want to tell my team, and then I'll tell the rest of the company. He tells me not to tell my team because he wants to call them first. But again, like, bruh, I really need these CEOs to know they like me more than I like you. Like, don't you realize that they tell me all the shit that you do behind my back? And it just like validated, like, yes, Brittany, this is you need to leave. Again, at the time, I thought daylight was just like the saving grace and the perfect next step for me. Because again, I could take the experience I learned at the previous digital bank and apply it immediately, right? Like, I had been there. They were like maybe a couple steps behind us, but like they were very close, and so it was great. And again, like I just didn't have the energy to do like an actual full search. So here I am, jumping into daylight at the end of January. I had been going through the egg freezing process at the time, actually for the last couple of months, or the previous couple of months. I think like I took my first blood test, actually at a T-Mobile site, I think in like September of 2021. And then between that and the end of January, he's doing all of the injections of hormones, the blood tests, and seeing the doctor and all the things. And so it finally became time for my egg retrieval, which was, I want to say like the first week or maybe the second week tops, that I had started at daylight. And so yeah, at first I wasn't going to say anything, because it's a new job, right? Like you don't want to immediately take time off. Also, I don't necessarily want to share all my personal business with everyone without like, for that reason. Because these are all new people. Like I didn't know anyone there. Like again, I had Billy. I knew of her because we had a lot of fintech friends in common. Rob, I had met like at that year, 2021, the money 2020 of that year. But like I had met him for maybe 30 minutes. Me and a coworker we were at a happy hour of some sort, and he was telling me about like when he was gonna get his Halloween costume for New York, like all types of just like random things. But like I didn't really know these people for real, and I didn't want to be like, oh, by the way, I need to take some time off to do this like fertility thing that blah 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 blah. But in any case, I tell him during our one-on-one that like I'm doing this. I'm gonna take the day off, and even though I was like a little bit nerve-wracking to say that, not because like I'm embarrassed about the situation, but because again, like you're my new employer, and one, you don't really need to know my personal medical business. You shouldn't know my personal medical business, but I also felt that like I should be honest and not just say I have an appointment that day, I'm gonna take the day off, because he was, very honest and upfront with me during an interview about his medical situation. And so I was upfront about mine, and then he said something to the effect of, "Oh, that's great. When we get to fertility, like you can be our subject matter expert." And I was kind of like, "That's what you got?" Like of what I said, like that's what you got? Okay, that's an interesting thing. Again, hindsight. Again, that should have been the moment where I recognized like I just wasn't a real person. Again, these are my opinions, right? This is what I felt. This is my lived experience, because that would not have been how I expected someone who told me their medical business to react. Because it's not like when he said it to me, I was like, oh yeah, no, I can absolutely see how you can use this for the benefit of your business. Although he actually said that in that interview, he was like, I'll just leave it there. But like my medical journey, my fertility journey is not someone's business opportunity. If it's damn sure ain't my business opportunity, it's not your motherfucking business opportunity. And I didn't offer it up. Like I'm just telling you, because I'm gonna take the day off. And I said something about it to my therapist. I didn't say anything in the moment because again, it's more shock. And with me, I call myself a little bit of a mini processor. Like I have to process things for like up to 24 hours to be able to kind of put the pieces together a bit. But when I talked about it to my therapist, I was like, that was just really strange. But again, like you discount it, you move on. I had the procedure, which was fucking painful. I mean, the procedure itself, I was knocked out for. And I legitimately like just woke up in a chair. Like it was the weirdest thing. It's the only, like I haven't been put under before like that, but dealing with the aftermath of that was so painful. And the day that I had the procedure and one of my friends drove me home, flowers showed up that day. Like a couple hours later, which I thought was super sweet. Like I was just like, this is I took it as a sign, like you made the right decision, Brittany. Like they really care about you as a human. Like they didn't have to send you flowers. And I just felt really nice to be taken care of a little bit. in a way. And then, oh, I completely forgot like a whole piece. I actually met Paul before I technically started. So between, like, he came back I think in early January, and like I didn't start to the end of the month. I think we had a couple of like email things, and I think we met like once or maybe twice, just like virtually. And Billy, Rob, and Paul all essentially told me about an associate PM that was currently working there that needed to be let go. And they didn't say like, hey, you need to fire them. They were like, so there's an existing associate and they have been underperforming, and you'll probably want to let them go, but I want to make sure it's your decision. Again, one of those things that was kind of like weird, because if they were underperforming, why would you wait for me to fire them? Strange. Just let them go. Like, if you have cause for it, not as if you need cause nowadays to fire anyone, because most companies do not need cause to fire anyone. But I was also kind of like one of those things like, well, that's strange. And I remember asking a couple of questions of like, well, why is he underperforming and things of that nature. But either way, I was gonna give this person like the full opportunity to like to show me that like their skill set and all the things. I wasn't just gonna take it off the bat. What I happened to find out later is that they had already had trouble with. Oh, by the way, this kid is black and queer. I was like the only that I knew of, the only non-queer. Me and the head of engineering were the only non-queer people at Daylight. Everyone else was queer. But the person that I'm talking about, the existing associate PM, he was a black queer kid, and I find out as like I'm onboarding that like they had, maybe not exactly as I'm onboarding, but like very early in my tenure there, that they had a previous issue with another black employee. I think it was like they had hired them to be the chief of staff, right? And apparently within the first week of this person's, I never met them because this person was gone by the time I joined, but within the first week of them joining, they had asked a question on like MLK Day, why don't we observe that? Because I think I asked the same question. Because I think I asked the same question when I joined, but it was like for a different reason. But in any case, so they asked, and it sounded like, from my understanding of like the conversations with the people who were involved at the time, that Rob got like all defensive and essentially was like, why is he upset? Because like we have another black holiday. Like, excuse me, sir? What? Repeat that for me? Cause you damn sure didn't say what I thought you motherfucking said. But apparently he did. And the person who he had said this to, as I understand it, like then had to explain, taking on this emotional labor to essentially explain like MLK Day and Juneteenth, which is what Rob was alluding to, are not black holidays, they're American holidays, okay? And I get that all the founders, interestingly enough, are like all immigrants, but I think, as far as I understand it, yeah, but still, so as I understand what then ended up happening with his chief of staff is that then he got fired within a week of him starting. So again, I was not there, but I can only believe that he got fired because he asked this question. Because I can't understand of someone doing something so egregious, again, and I was not there, so these are just I don't even say assumptions, but this is like plausibly what my thoughts are. That him asking that question was like, oh, he doesn't belong here, and we need to get rid of him. And as I understand it, this chief of staff got fired within a week, and he got 6 weeks of severance. 6 weeks of severance for like 6 days of work. So if you want to call it a payoff, you can call it a payoff. I'm not going to judge how you determine what to call things. But that bit is going to be important once we get to my offers. So remember that, bookmark that in your brain. So anyway, so get back to the story, at least how it applies to me. So I get in, again, I join the company. They're telling me this black associate product manager needs to be fired, but they won't fire him. Now it kind of makes sense, right? Now it seems, and again, I said this to my therapist, where it's like, it seems like they hired me to fire this kid so that they can't be labeled racist. I don't know that for sure. Things set themselves up in such a way that I think that is a plausible thing to get to. But again, I'll let you be the judge. I'm not saying that they did. I'm not saying that they didn't. But the reality is, it sure as hell looked that way. So what ended up happening is that I did let that PM go, but it was not because of what they asked me to do. I had given the PM, we had talked, I had understood their side of the story, what they had been dealing with in the organization. They had a lot of issues with management in the organization. I won't go into specifics, but we essentially talked about a PIP and the 2 weeks to kind of turn things around, and then they just weren't able to follow through. And so for that reason is why I ended up letting them go. The point of that matter is like the prep of it all, the kind of cover your ass of it all. Again, it's just like, it's very suspect. Let me just put it that way. Like, it's hella suspect. And I don't like to think, like, to pull the race card and be like, oh, I'm your token. You hired me just to fire black people. Cause like, I'm fucking amazing, bro. Like, I've at this point built damn near, or at least helped build damn near 5 digital banks. So like, I know what I'm doing. And even if I didn't have that specific experience with fintech, I'm a badass product person, okay? That's just, I have come to know that as a fact. So like, I don't fully believe that that was the only reason they hired me, but I think it had something to do with it. Because again, otherwise, why would you not fire that person before? If again, you've had issues, they've been underperforming apparently for some time. I get that like at that point, that was the only product body in the organization. But the CTO was essentially acting as a product person in the product department. So like, if someone's heavily underperforming, again, anyway, I'm not trying to make even a better case than I think I've already done. I will end this video kind of like I end my blog, with just like addressing some questions that you may or may not have had as you're listening to all of what I've been recanting about my experience with Daylight. But I know the questions that are in people's minds because they have come to me in one way or another. So like, one is about, why are you trying to be petty? Like, just let it go. You know, they blah blah blah. You've done what you needed to do. Like, move on. Let these people live. Whatever. And again, I'm not being petty. I'm sharing my lived experience with people so they can learn from it, right? They can learn what not to do. They can learn to see some of the red flags that they may not have seen before, like in their own experience, but also know what to look for in potentially new experiences with folks. And the reality is, like, these people were in positions of power. And with that comes a certain amount of accountability. And I'm holding them accountable for the behavior that they have done, for the things that they have done, and the mostly negative impact that they have made to the people that they've convinced to join them. I want to warn people. I want them to learn, but I think part of getting into these positions of power, like, it should come with this level of accountability. You shouldn't get to like skirt away and then rinse and repeat and do the same shit over again. Like, to me, like that's just not acceptable. And I think we all deserve better. I posted this on LinkedIn before. I think like, we legitimately all deserve better. Employees deserve better. LPs that are investing in funds deserve better. Like, we all fucking deserve better. And if anything comes out of this, I'm hoping the fact that we are starting to hold CEOs and founders more accountable to their actions. And like, to me, that's the good deed. That's the change that this industry needs to make. And I'm happy to hopefully be the impetus there a little bit. Secondly, this company's whole mission was about helping queer people. And they did the most damage to the queer people that worked for them. The most, okay? That is not fucking okay. And unfortunately, that happened in the previous company that I worked with too. They were focused on Black America, and they did the most harm to Black women who work for that company. That is not fucking okay. And I'm a big thing about justice. So the fact that they did this harm and are continuously defensive about it, and I can't say specifically Paul because I have not heard anything that he has said since he left the organization before this article came out in March of 2022 or 2023 rather. But as far as I can understand from Billy and Rob, like their actions have shown that like there's no remorse. There's been no change. There has been no enlightenment. There's been no remorse. And so therefore, like I do feel, because I'm in a position of power in a certain sense, that I need other people to know what they're gonna get into if they decide to like work with them moving forward. And if I felt that they actually felt remorseful and that they were trying to do different, then I wouldn't necessarily feel the need to like speak up and all. I probably would still be doing this, but I'd probably be focusing it more on the actual process versus them as, in my opinion, horrible people. So there's that. Again, it's not about being petty. It's about sharing this information with the community. It's about holding these leaders, these people in power, accountable to their actions, which we should all be doing regardless of who they are. Okay, and then I think the second question was, this just sounds like a regular organization. You know, like things like this, it has good and it has bad. It does have good and it does have bad. I'm not discounting that, because these people are human. Like, we all do good things, we all do bad things. I think in this case, it was like a smattering of good amongst a lot of bad. And again, I'm only talking about my experience. And this was just in like the first couple of weeks that all these red flags came up. There's much more that happens, and you'll find out in part 2. And then there's much more that happens to all of the other people that I've gotten close to and I've grown to know over my time at Daylight, and actually beyond Daylight since then. And all those people matter. Their experience matters. And this shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't just be like, yeah, you should expect to be traumatized by every single person that you work for. It should expect to spend all your free time going to therapy and working through all these things, or like question your identity and your effectiveness as a person. Like, that should not be a prerequisite to make a living. I'm sorry. That's not okay with me. That's just not. And so I also want to make it very clear, particularly to like, you know, folks newer in their career, like this is not normal and you should not accept this. If it feels wrong in your gut. If your gut is telling you that don't seem right, or like that was weird, like you gotta listen to it. And I think I'm guilty of this, where I have kind of turned off my inner critic or convinced myself that I was wrong about something, or I need to give something more of a chance. Because I need the paycheck, because X, Y, and Z, because expectations of, oh, this is actually a good job for you, use a great time, whatever the case may be, and stop listening to myself, to my gut. And we need to stop doing that. We honestly, like, and part of the reason why I'm doing this, of like finding my voice and using my voice, is because for a number of years I didn't have it. I between like toxic relationships and toxic workplaces, I didn't have a voice. But I found it again through a lot of therapy and coaching and people that care enough to listen, that this is important. So I'm going to use the voice that I have found, and I hope others will as well. Not only does your voice matter, but you matter. And this shit is not normal, and we should not normalize it to be such. All right, that's the end of part 1. I hope that gives you good context. Again, part 2 is going to be a bit about my actual experience, past the first couple weeks there. It's going to include the retreat in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and probably include the layoffs as well. So for a time period, this first part was from December of 2021 till about, let's say, end of February-ish. Yeah, probably end of February-ish of 2022. The next piece will be around, you know, February to the layoffs happened in June of 2022. But when I tell you a lot of shit is gonna be a part 2, bruh, I'm just saying, come prepared. Come prepared. And if you want to hear a little bit more of me, just kind of free ranting about the why I'm doing this, you can stay after the credit. I don't think there's any real credits, but the credit. To hear me blurb about that. Okay, all right, enough talking. Thanks so much for listening and watching. If you have any questions actually, like about this first part or just about my experience in general, please DM me on LinkedIn, on here. I'm gonna try and incorporate those questions in the next part. So yeah, we'll go from there. All right, take care. And it helped me because like I had to go through it and I still have to process all the trauma that I experienced. But being quiet allows these folks to kind of go about their normal lives as if they didn't do the things that they did, which they did. These are facts. It allows them to pretend like it didn't happen, they didn't cause harm to a lot of people. And again, as you'll probably read in the blog, if they were apologetic, if they would have like actually was introspective and realize what happened and change their ways, then like I wouldn't be so much holding them accountable because they're holding themselves accountable, right? But since they are not, here I am. I took the job that you didn't want me to take. But anyway, you know, so if I'm silent, it helps the people, you can call them the bad people in the situation, but it doesn't help me. It doesn't help me process. It doesn't help my community to learn from this mistake. It's not just like learning what not to do if you're in a position of power, but also learn how to identify toxic workplaces or toxic people, narcissistic people, all of those things that they're gonna create a space that's not meant for you, where you can't actually do your job or thrive or any of those things. And for the people that are in similar situations, like, then what do you do if you find yourself like, I have been harmed so badly, I want justice? I have known a couple people who have actually sued their employers, but even as close friends, they can't tell me all the details because they signed NDAs, and this is no shade on them at all, because I 125% support them in their decisions and with the things that they needed to do to make themselves whole and happy at the end of the day. But I wish I would have had a resource like this where someone was saying like, this is what I did, yo. This is what I would do differently next time if it came down to it, or blah, blah, blah. And for those who are thinking like, shit, like you are putting a target on your back, you're right, I am. I've done it. The target came on my back as soon as we more or less like fought back. And I have been retaliated against, and we'll get into that eventually. To me, there's more value in sharing this with people to learn from, to give myself another avenue to heal, than it is to be silent. Because again, I'm moving on. I have a job. I actually bought a new place, which is why my background is different, because I'm still unpacking. But like life is moving on, but that doesn't mean that like you should absolve people if they aren't doing the work, right? I just don't want, what pains me is that another person would fall victim to the same situation that I did because they just didn't know, because this resource wasn't out there. So that's why I'm doing this. Anyway, there's a long preamble. I probably will move this to the end.